So, hello everyone. Welcome back to our Talking with Titans webinar series. Today we'll be talking about a theme that is trending now. It's enzymes in aquafeeds. Enzymes, they are used to improve utilization of proteins, minerals, energy, and also reduce the effect of anti-nutritional factors. And the most common enzymes will be phytase, protease, carbohydrates. And but there is some myth around the use of enzymes and some misunderstandings and misconceptions. So today we have a very special guest who is also the co-founder and co-owner, or actually founder and co-owner of the ANN, Aquaculture Nutritionist Network, Dr. Kabir Chowdhury. He'll be doing the presentation for us. So maybe Dr. Kabir, you can introduce a little bit of yourself, apart from being the current director of the Southeast Asia director for JEPFO Nutrition.
Well,
Welcome.
thank you, Fanny, and thank you, Albert, Dr. Albert Taken, to be Dr. Fanny Yasumaru and Albert Taken for having this event. My background, I was, as you could read, right, from the advertisement, that I was born in Bangladesh for sure, currently now in Bangladesh. I finished my master's from Thailand, AIT, if you know, and then I moved to Canada for a PhD. I finished my PhD in animal nutrition from University of Guelph. Then I joined JEFO to manage the aquaculture, develop and manage the aquaculture program, and started with enzymes. That's my introduction to enzymes in 2012. Uh, After managing aquaculture program for about 8 years, I had some personal issues, and so I moved to the region, South Asia. And I think Asia is the hub of aquaculture, producing 80% of aquaculture products in the world. So me moving back to Asia, I think it makes logical sense as the person of aquaculture. So that's me. I think I will hand over to you, Dr. Fanny. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Kabir. So I don't think we need to introduce Dr. Albert Taken. Would you like to say something, Albert? A few words.
I'm happy that we're all together again. We have the real star of our show now, Kabir, who will be talking about his expertise in the field of enzymes. It's a very, very important topic for the sector, and it will become more so in the future. So I'm very happy that Kabir is here and will present for us. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you. So Kabir, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Fanny. I will try to share my screen. In the Talking with Titans is kind of Dr. Albert Taken wanted to ask me hard questions, but being me in the moderator side, it was difficult for him to ask hard questions. So here I am today, talking about what I have been working since 2012 on, enzymes, especially protease enzymes in aquaculture. So we will talk about enzymes and how enzymes can help our environment and in turn help sustainable aquaculture development worldwide, and as well as economical benefit for all stakeholders, from small farmers to large farmers to integrators to feed millers. All right, and then ingredient suppliers, raw material suppliers, etc. And I want to connect these three things: enzyme, environment, economy, at the end of the presentation. So let us move on. We will talk about a little bit on the current scenario, why we need enzymes, and the current scenario is not very fun. You know, like it's not very good, because as we all know, the raw material price is increasing, the shipping and the traffic is very critical, and then price for to ship from one product from one country to another has increased a lot significantly, so which is affecting the price of feed, and at the end, farmers are suffering. Here's the commodity price, right? Commodity index of agricultural raw materials in the last uh, five years. As you can see, the price is always fluctuating, and in the recent months, uh, it has gone up significantly. In the next slide, we will go to the soybean meal monthly price, because soybean meal is the most common protein source, plant protein source that we are using. Almost 80% of the plant proteins coming from soybean meal used in the animal feed. So as you can see, the price has gone up in June significantly. It's historically the highest price in June this year. It has come down a little, but still coming, say, if we want to import from in Asia, if we want to import soybean meal from US or from Latin America, the price has gone significantly up because of like the shipping cost has gone up significantly. All right, so this is a really a huge creating a huge bottleneck for the industry um, in recent months, and everyone is suffering, not only aqua feed industry, but also other animal feed industry. So let's talk about raw material quality. So raw material quality can vary from region to region, right? From soybean meal from US can be highly different than the quality of soybean meal, highly different from Brazil or from India. They also can vary from season to season. If one year there is very high rain, quality can be different than one year if there is a relatively drier season. Can also vary from supplier to supplier, from one country producing the same season because of the manufacturing process and conditions. The quality can vary from supplier to supplier, and from a single supplier, they can vary from batch to batch because the small changes in the processing or the source materials. So and these large variations in the raw material quality can affect the feed quality in terms of storage and stability of the feed, water stability of the feed. They can disintegrate very quickly if the raw material quality is not good, uh, and then can affect the performance of the feed. For example, digestibility of nutrients can also affect animal performance, growth, animal health, and stress response. And at the end, it affects the economic performance, which is bottom. So digestibility is never 100%. This is an example from a study where they did the digestibility of different raw materials. And as you can see, ADC of good protein and different amino acids from different raw material can vary significantly, and they're never 100%. So there is always between 10, 30%, sometimes 40% gap in terms of digestibility. You can find 60 to 90% digestibility. Even in feather meal processed differently, you can see the differences can be very large. I will just touch one example. We did a trial in USA at the University of Idaho, looking at digestibility of 17 raw materials, and there were a couple of raw materials we sourced from 2 or 3 different sources. One example is feather meal here. You can see on the left side is feather meal, right is poultry meal. Feather meal from source A, apparent digestibility coefficient of crude protein was 70.6, whereas for source B, 64.1. So there's a 6.5 point difference between the digestibility of these two different of this raw material from 2 different sources. Same for soybean meal, poultry meal, so 68.5, and another one is 70.5. So we need to smooth out this variation, right? Because normally it's difficult to assess the digestibility instantly. It takes time to analyze digestibility. So raw materials are coming in, we have to make the feed, and we don't know the quality of this specific raw material, which can vary from the difference from the same raw material sourced a bit earlier or later. There could be a difference in digestibility. So we need to smooth out this inherent variation in digestibility of nutrients. And for that, enzyme could be a solution. So example from this from the same study, As you can see, feather meal from source A was 70.6, source B was 64.1. When we added enzyme, the feed with feather meal from source B, the digestibility increased from 64.1 to 65.8. Same goes for poultry byproduct meal. Digestibility from source A, which was lower than source B, increased from 68.5 to 69.1. So using enzymes can reduce these inherent variations in raw material digestibility, okay, and make the feed quality a little bit, less variation in the feed quality of the feed as well. So in the end, there will be less variation in the performance of the animal. So in summary, the raw material supply and price is highly volatile. You understand that, when we need to minimize that, and the raw material quality is highly inconsistent, right? So we need to smooth out this variation in the raw material quality. And there's a significant amount of undigested nutrients left from the feed, which can degrade the environment. And there's always a bad press coming out of this degradation of environment from aquaculture. So that's another critical issue. So we need to improve digestibility as well. And for that, enzymes can be an effective solution to solve these issues. So let us talk about enzymes, right? So we'll start with phytase because phytase is the most used enzymes in aquafeed, and the reason behind uses of we use phytase is because there's undigested phytate phosphorus, which is between 0.72% in cereal grains and oil seeds, which is the main cause of eutrophication in natural waters. So we need to improve the digestibility of phosphorus so that there's less waste coming out of the coming out to the environment. So phytase has been taken as a solution to improve digestibility of especially phytate phosphorus from plant raw ingredients. So this phytase can be microbial or fungal, and then from microbial phytase, the pH optima is between 3 and 6. Acid phytase, average pH is 5. Alkaline phytase, average pH is 8. Temperature tolerance can vary between 35 and 77 degrees Celsius. And as I said, used to release phosphorus, inorganic phosphorus, and also some other bivalent cations, and in some cases, some amino acids. Okay, we'll talk about in the next slides. And the phytases that are available in the market today are mainly histidine acid phosphatase. So they are acidic phosphatase with pH optima lower than 7. Right? So phytic acid mainly bind bivalent cations, starting with calcium, zinc, manganese, and iron. So which means reacts with other bivalent cations. Also can bind some trace minerals. And most of the phosphorus are released efficiently. There are 6 binding sites but most of the phosphorus are bound here. Almost 70% bind with the IP6 here in the 6. So unused phosphorus, as I said earlier, main cause of eutrophication and interaction. There's a lot of talks about phytate can bind with amino acids. So with phytase, there will be some amino acid can be released. In the metrics, you will see that there is also values for amino acids. But we need to make that clear which amino acids are mainly susceptible to bind with phytate or phytic acid. Right? This study we have done in 2009, published in 2012, where we looked at digestibility of amino acids from Indian mustard protein concentrate and Indian mustard meal. And as you know that these raw materials, Indian mustard, rapeseed, canola, they are the same kind of raw material, same group, and they are very high in phytate or phytic acid. Here we regressed phytic acid intake in the x-axis, and y-axis was apparent digestibility of these specific basic amino acids. And in acidic condition, because most phytates are acidic, in acidic, which they work mostly in the stomach and proximal intestine. So they bind mostly with the basic amino acids. There are three basic amino acids: arginine, lysine, and histidine. And as you can see, the histidine is highly susceptible to the phytic acid intake. There is almost a linear decrease of of apparent digestibility of histidine with the intake of phytic acid. So phytic with amino acid can be formed like binary and ternary bonds, binary with phytic acids and ternary bonds with phytic acid mineral and then amino acids. In this case, for arginine, lysine, histidine, it is ternary bonds, mostly binding with the calcium site. And binary bonds happen when the condition is higher than the pK value, which is in alkaline condition mostly like binary bonds happen, but ternary bonds happen in acidic conditions. So this phytase effectively, because they are mostly active in the stomach, so they can effectively release these three amino acids, which forms ternary bonds in acidic condition, right? Lower than the pK value. So going to the next slides, this is I recovered it like I found it yesterday, published this year, this study, and it shows that if you look at the pH and number of protons from phytic acids, uh, there are high level of number of protons in the acidic conditions in ionic form, so they are more susceptible they are more active in the acidic in the stomach condition, and as the pH increases, the level of protons decreases. And in the figure D, you can see that particular protein is binding with the calcium ion in acidic condition. So this is very recent publication. So what we found in 2012 that the basic amino acids are binding with phytic acid. It proves, this picture proves what we found in 2012, right? Now coming to the NSPAs or fiber degrading enzymes or carbohydrates, there are different kinds of carbohydrates, and it based on which substrates they react upon. For example, xylanase, they work on arabinoxylans, releasing xylose or arabinoxylo oligosaccharides. Okay. In case of cellulase, they work on cellulose, right? Beta-glucanase, glucans. One point to consider in this case for beta-glucanase, because some raw materials have high level of beta-glucans. So my question is, do we really want to release glucans from this, release sugar from this beta glucans, because beta glucans has prebiotic effect as well as they act in the immune act as a like immuno stimulant in animals. So there was studies that with high level of beta glucanase, sometimes we see a reduction in performance of the animals. So I would question if you're using a multi-enzyme, whether you want beta glucanase or not in that complex, or if you want to have beta glucanase, the level you have to consider the level of beta glucanase in the complex, in the enzyme complex. Pectinase works on pectins, and with pectin is a soluble protein coming from pulp or different fruit pulp or some raw materials. So pectinase will work on pectins. Alpha amylase work on starch, and this is not necessarily NSPAs. I want to highlight this one. This is a biocatalyst enzyme, galactose oxidase, because recently we are hearing more about enzymatic oxidation of mycotoxins. This is the kind of enzymes will come in future in play. You will hear more about this kind of enzymes uh, to to cut to to inactivate mycotoxins or any other chemical toxins using as a biocatalyst. So I will just show one example of giving of galactose oxidase. So fumonisin B1, they mainly oxidize alcohols, right? And you can see these mycotoxins, fumonisin B1, zearalenone, dioxin, even all these the aflatoxin B1, they all have this hydroxyl ion in their chain, and this galactose oxidase weak one this will inactivate these toxins because of their alcoholic bond here with hydroxyl. And so let's go to the next slide. We can talk about protease. This kind of there are different kinds of protease you will find in the market. There could be microbial, like bacterial or fungal. They could be neutral or alkaline. They could be acid, neutral, or alkaline. There are some products with all three, acid, neutral, and alkaline, in the market. They could be genetically modified to hydrolyze specific substrates, or they could be from natural source, non-GMO source. There could be exo or endopeptidase, serine, cysteine, peptidase, protease, or aspartic protease, metalloprotease. And what you see in the market, they are mostly serine or metalloprotease, or serine and metalloprotease. They can be divided, as I said, by their pH preference, and also composition of that particular complex. It could be a monocomponent protease or could be a multi-component protease. So a monocomponent protease, we need to define that. It's hard to find the definition, but the way we can define the monocomponent protease, where one component occupies more than 50% of that product. Only one specific protease occupies more than 50%. Whereas in multi-component protease, there is always there's more than one or two proteases in the complex. But when you say monocomponent, one is more than 50%. In case of multi-component, none of the component are more than 50%. Okay, so when we compare a protease, we have to think about these definitions. They can be in liquid form or powder form, could be used in mixer, or could be used for post-pelleting application. And also they can be defined based on substrate preference. For example, trypsin cleaves lysine and arginine. Chymotrypsin, which is most common to hydrolyze proteins, it can work on trypsin. It cleaves trypsin, tryptophan, tyrosine, phenylalanine, and leucine. And in case of elastase, it works on elastine, like elastine proteins or conjugate proteins, but needs metallic ions to be activated, when we can call these metallic ions as cofactor to activate these enzymes. Okay. Next, protease, how protease works and what it does. As we know, obviously, they improves the protein digestion, improve the digestibility of proteins and amino acids. In some case, energy as well, for sure, because protein is equivalent to energy. Also improves immunity. As I said, the metalloprotease, they also works in the immune cycle. For example, in shrimp, to exert in the phenol oxidase production cycle, right, which produces in response to if it was hurt or have lessons, you will see the dark spots, hard dark spots is coming from phenol oxidase, and in that cycle, these metalloproteases play a critical role, right? So they can also improve immunity, and all enzymes can modulate gut microbes through different mechanisms. And there are a lot of examples you can find, enzymes affecting the gut microbes in the hindguts of the animal. So in summary, phytase mostly works in acidic condition. Phytate reacts mostly, again, with basic amino acid, which is lysine, arginine, and histidine. Microbial, bacterial are better, right? As we will show some examples later as well. And in case of protease, it could be monocomponent protease, multi-component protease, based on pH, which contains all three, acid, neutral, and alkaline protease, and multi-component alkaline protease, because there's at least 80 different kinds of alkaline protease you can find in animal intestine. So there's at least 3 or 4 major components in this, major alkaline protease components in this multi-component alkaline proteases. They improve digestion, immunity, and gut microbe. All right, this is a summary for this section. Next section is talking about the myths, as Dr. Fanny Asumar said, that we'll discuss some mystic meats, right? It's like misty winter, right? Evening, you can see the picture. We'll talk about some mystic meats. So first myth is that our assumption that all carbohydrates are equal, or all proteases are equal, or all phytases are equal, right? And we try to compare one another, but based on different parameters, especially based on activity. So let's talk about the phytase first, right? This is a paper published a few years ago, right? It's a review paper on phytase. Let us see some of the discussion from this. So phytase, you have like, as I said, six sites where phosphorus can be found, bound. Phosphorus can be found. So this phytase is in the market, either 3 or 6. So as I mentioned earlier, that zero point 0.6, there's more than 70% of the phosphorus is bound at the 0.6. So the phytase, which acts on 6 phytase, can be more effective than the 3 phytase. So when you were going to uh, purchase a phytase, look at whether it's a 3 phytase or 6 phytase, right? And as I said, phytase works on the acidic condition. Here you can see the stomach pH between 2 and 6, so mostly working in the stomach, and pH in the proximal intestine 5.5, 7.5, so they work a little bit in the proximal intestine as well. But as we move along the GI tract, uh, there's less and less and less activity of phytase. So the phytase in the market today, this is a 3-type phytase from Aspergillus niger. It's a fungus, as you know. So pH optima is 2. There are different pH optima, 2 and 5 to 5 and 5. And the optimum temperature is 65. Another one is from E. coli, also type 3 phytase. That's a pH is 4.5, temperature is 55. This is 6 phytase from E. coli, expressed in E. coli, and pH optima. There's 2 pH optima again, multiple pH optima, which is better, 3.4 and 5, and temperature is 58. So optimal temperature ranges between 50 and 60. All this relatively, I would say, heat-stable protease. Okay, heat-stable phytase. With the next one, as you can see, different phytase, one from Peniophora. At the right is Peniophora lysii, which is also a fungus. Aspergillus niger is a fungus. As you can see, as the pH level goes up for E. coli, the activity of phytase is going down. Okay. From 130 at 2.5, 84 for at 2.5 to 88 at 52 for both E. coli. And for fungus, it's a little bit the opposite. The activity is going up with the increase in pH. So if it is fungal pH, it is working a little bit more in the proximal intestine, right? Whereas if it is a bacterial phytase, it is working mostly in the stomach. And there also activity is higher at 5.5, at least higher than Peniophora lysii, right? In case of both E. coli and I think same as Aspergillus niger in case of E. coli 1, even at higher pH. So it depends what you want to choose, but higher activity normally we see coming out of bacterial phytase. So it's bacteria better. This is one example from the same study. As you can see here, this is the Peniophora lysii phytase with pepsine and crude extract, and E. coli phytase with pepsine, and then E. coli phytase with crude extract. Sorry, this one is the E. coli phytase, and this is the Peniophora. As you can see, within up to 60 minutes, they didn't change too much, but after 60 minutes, the activity of fungal phytase dropped significantly, and within 3 hours, it comes to almost zero. Whereas, in case of bacterial phytase, they remain very stable, and at least up to 4 hours in this case, right? They studied for 4 hours, so they didn't change much in case of bacterial phytase, the activity. So this is another one, the in vivo, within the animal, the phytase efficiency relates to based on 4 factors. It's like, is it 3 or 6 phytase, bacterial or fungal phytase, in which organism they were expressed, optimal range of pH, and another critical point is how resistant this phytase is to protease. Okay. Also depends on phytase activity in the GI tract, species and age of animals, and endogenous microbial phytase coming from endogenous gut bacteria. There is also dietary related factors. We have to understand how much phytate phosphorus is there before we decide how much phytase we need to use, and type of substrates available, and total phosphorus. And another critical point is calcium phosphorus ratio, which can also affect phytase activity in the GI tract. Finally, the method of analysis and the recovery in the feed. Okay. In case of carbohydrates, it's just two examples of Xylanase and amylase, right? Xylanase works in xylans, as I mentioned. Amylase works in starch. This is another example. In plant cell wall, we have cellulose, hemicelluloses, which is mainly xylans, and lignin. And this is endoxylanase, right? And endoxylanase can release arabinoxyl oligosaccharides, which is like mid-sized fragments, whereas with exoxylanase, you get xylose sugar and polysaccharide fractions of high molecular weight. So the xylose sugars are readily absorbed as an energy source, but this polysaccharide fractions remains indigestible. Whereas in case of endoxylanase, is more arabino excess or arabinoxyl oligosaccharides are produced, which also acts as a prebiotic. Okay, and also gut health can line the extra, same as the moss. It can work as a moss, can protect the gut lining excess, so can improve health of the animal significantly when we are using endoxylanase. In the next slide, when we choose a xylanase, we look at these different raw materials we use today, right, from plant sources. So the insoluble fraction of arabinoxylans, like IX, is much higher than the soluble fraction of arabinoxylans. In case of barley, it's almost 9 times. In case of corn, 50 times, right? For 45 times insoluble fraction of arabinoxylans than the soluble ones. So when we choose a xylanase, it is important that to understand how much of this xylanase works on insoluble fraction of arabinoxylans, right? This is one example. So on the x-axis, you will see endoxylanase activity towards soluble arabinoxylan substrates coming from different, different organisms, and in the y-axis, you will see the endoxylan activity towards insoluble fraction from these microorganisms. And it is very clear that this, on the right hand side, this organism is acting more on the soluble fractions, whereas this bacterial origin endoxylanase working mostly on insoluble fraction. So if we want a little bit of high insoluble fraction and a little bit of other, we can choose from this range. These are very critical slide to understand, right? What kind of endoxylanase we should be choosing to work on our raw materials. Now coming to protease, there are so many types of protease, as I mentioned earlier. This is same, we discussed about this, we're just repeating. Microbial, fungal, GMO, non-GMO, exo, endo, based on pH, composition, their form, substrate preference, trypsin, chymotrypsin, elastase, or there are other proteases as well. So let us talk about the next myth, which is the activity. We always talk about the activity. We try to compare different enzymes, different suppliers, different sources of same enzymes based on their activity. Let us dig a little bit deeper on this issue, right? So this is from the same publication I showed earlier, published in 2015. They tested 4 commercial products. You'll see that in the top row, and then there are different methods analyzed by different methods. So for natufos, activity by producer is 5,000. When it is analyzed by AOSC method, with AOSC method, the activity increased to 7,300. With another supplier, Danisco, activity is 4,800. Phytex 4,400. So activity is varying a lot, and the higher activity with the AOSC method. With Phyzyme, AOC method is the same. Danisco is a little bit lower, and with Phytex, it's 1/4 of what is declared by the producer, right? It's very interesting. So we cannot compare one to another based on, because really we need to have a single standard to analyze this, which is very difficult to have because their production method is different, their form is different, so their performance would be different as well. So, but the real indicator to judge a phytase product should be how much inorganic phosphorus is released. Here is it, based on the activity by producer, as you can see in the bottom two row. So for nitrophos is 0.34, but based on activity analyzed by AOC method, 0.24. There is a significant decrease based on the activity analyzed by AOC method. Phyzyme is identical with the Bork method. Nonozyme P is a little bit decreased, and Optifos decreased significantly, almost 5 times decreased from the activity by producer. So this should be the use. Probably if you're a feed miller, you can use the activity based analyzed by AOC method and analyze the amount of inorganic phosphorus released, and then you can have an idea which one you should be using, right? Which is working better in your feed, right? Because each feed matrix is different. So we need to choose enzymes that is working better in my feed. So in case of protein, you could look at soluble nitrogen or soluble protein, which is easy to analyze after hydrolyzing for 3 or 5 hours, right, with that particular enzyme. So protease, there's a lot of different kinds of protease and a lot of different methods to analyze protease activity. The standard method is azocasein method, where tyrosine, one single amino acid, is used as an indicator. This is a standard method to analyze protease activity. There are other for pepsine. There's acid hemoglobin method. For trypsin-like esterase, there's a TAME used as a substrate, which is a toluene sulfonyl L-arginine methyl ester used as a substrate, and their activity is measured as the amount of arginine, L-arginine released from the substrate. For trypsin serine protease, that's BAPNA, I call BAPNA, a substrate, benzoyl DL-arginine, nitroanilide. So they also, it's a different method. For chymotrypsin-like is a BTEE substrate being used. It's another method. And finally, for chymotrypsin enzymes, some of the suppliers use this method, AAPF method or SEPNA. So it's about how much activity only of one component. When we analyze activity of a protease with once, except the azocasein, which just gives the amount of tyrosine released as a standard. So for some protease, maybe tyrosine is higher. For some protease, maybe other amino acids are releasing at higher level. So it's difficult to standardize activity of protease based on 1 or 2 amino acids, right? So now let's talk about that. We talk about a lot about the stability of enzymes, right? Because in aquafeed, the processing condition is really harsh. So there's a lot of strategies the enzyme manufacturers are taking. One of these strategies is coating the enzymes. So we will see, it's very difficult to find really comparing the same enzyme coated versus non-coated. I found a couple of examples. I will put them, like show them to you. So what are the issues with enzymes? So first issue is stability during the manufacturing process. If you put the mixer, it goes through conditioner, cooking conditioning phase, and then pelleting extrusion phase, which are also at high temperature and pressure, and moisture is high, and most of the enzymes can be destroyed during that process. Okay, I said most. And in case of post-pelleting application, right, liquid enzymes, there could be a leaching loss. Although after applying the enzyme on the pellet, they apply oil just to coat the enzyme so that they don't lose the enzymes from the pellet. We will see in another slide what happens to that. And efficacy for cold water species. So it's difficult because optimum temperature for enzymes, as we have seen, that 50, 60, or 40, 45. In cold water, animals are raised at very low temperature, between 8 to 18 or 19. For salmon, they stop eating after 18, so it says between 8 to 18 degrees Celsius. Most of the enzymes, I say most because some enzymes may be at 50, but the lowest activity you can find at 15, are not active at the temperature. So if you want the enzymes to work in the gut, they are not working at the temperature in the animal. So what to learn from it, right? And what is our experience from that in cold water species? This one example in broiler, they use a coated enzyme and non-coated enzyme, and coated with alginate, and you can see the results here, right? We let us focus on 0 to 6 weeks. Body weight gain 1791, the uncoated protease, and the coated protease 1824. There was a slight increase in the body weight, but there was no significant difference in body weight gain, as well as feed intake, as well as feed conversion ratio. The next is also in broiler, also coated. This is with amylase enzyme, right? As you can see, with weight gain 1846 and 1854, there was only 6 gram increase in weight gain, but there was no significant difference. Same goes for FCR, but there's a little bit higher decrease in FCR, 1.816 to 1.79. I said this is interesting results here, right? Uh, Sorry, FCR is 0.731 to 1.723. No significant difference, but slight decrease in feed conversion ratio. Okay, this is a mixed, coating material used in this case. This is in pig, and as you can see, there's a significant decrease in digestibility of nutrients when the protease is used. In all cases, in case of dry matter, with gross energy, crude protein, as well as organic matter. This is another coated protease example in carp. This is in aquaculture now, and this is a neutral protease, which was coated. Acidic protease was not coated. Alkaline protease was coated. As you can see, there's a graded level of enzymes was used from 75 ppm to 600 ppm, and there was from negative control. As you can see, the significant increase happens in mostly in case of there was no difference in final body weight, but a little increase happened in the final body weight at 300 and 600 ppm. FCR from negative control, yes, there's a significant improvement happened with negative control at both 300 and 600 ppm in case of FCR. So there's a mixed findings. Sometimes it is working, maybe sometimes it's working for feed conversion, but not in weight gain, and sometimes it's not working. There's one study, I think this is a PhD work, the hydrogenated fat-coated protease, also fat-coated carbohydrates is used in this study, and FP is a free protease, PP is a protected protease, microencapsulated, FC is free carbohydrates, PC is a microencapsulated carbohydrates. And as you can see, the weight gain thermally, there is no increase in growth rate. There's a little bit of increase in growth rate, no significance with the microencapsulated carbohydrates. Uh, Same goes for apparent net energy retention, right? There was no significant difference. So again, it's kind of mixed bag of results with the production technology of enzymes. But the critical point here is maybe the protections they have been using for other targeted for other animals for other purpose, right? So we need to release the enzymes. We need to understand. We need to release the enzymes in the proximal intestine of the animal in case of protease or carbohydrates, or in case of phytase, we need to release the enzymes in the stomach. So the protection technology they were using, probably releasing the enzymes much later section of the gut. So they don't have enough substrate to work on in the hindgut, and there's not much absorption happening as well. So this is critical to revise the technology and apply that again to work better in the animals, in the target animals in aqua. So leaching of protease with different coating materials. This is also from Dr. Orapint from Kasa University. She did this work. She used four different kind of coating materials, and as you can see, especially if you target for shrimp with chitosan, this leaching is the the variation is much higher, but almost 30% of the protease was leached with CMC and pululan and SIL4. I don't know what it is. The leaching is a bit lower than the chitosan, but still the variation is much higher even with different coating materials at 30 minutes. So now we'll touch a little bit about dry versus liquid. This is really, really interesting. To be honest, I could not find a real example comparing one single enzyme with two different forms, dry in the mixer, liquid in the post-pelleting, in a single study. Okay, very difficult. So we'll try to pull out some work. This is a very old work that published in 1997, talking about technical aspects of enzyme utilization, dry versus liquid enzymes, right? And the way liquid enzymes are applied is a spray drum, enzyme is applied, and then as I mentioned earlier, the enzymes, after applying the enzymes, it is coated with oil. So this is another study. Next slide, we'll talk about another. So you need a special applicator, liquid applicator, in the feed manufacturing process, right? And then you have to coat this enzyme or vitamins, whatever is there, in liquid application with oil to prevent from leaching. So this study by Dr. Rapid, again, looking at the nutrient loss from young fish feed, which could be starter, and then grower, nutrient loss from grower fish feed. In case of grower fish feed, uh, the lipid, right? This is dry matter, protein, lipid, and phosphorus. Phosphorus is the blue, and then the green is the lipid or oil. So lipid is leaching linearly in the grower feed from the grower feed with time. So within 1 minute, almost 6-7% of oil was leached. And then if you look at in case of starter feed, similar amount of 5-6 to 7% oil was leached from the feed. So interesting question is, uh, there was a door effect, right? If you don't need to open the whole thing. If one door is open, then things can easily go out or come in. So when you have say 6% is gone from the oil, without gone from the feed, there's a large door is open, and there could be significant amount of enzymes could be leached in the water. So I would suggest that in shrimp feed, okay, liquid enzymes may not be in fish feed. It's a high density fish farming where fish readily takes the pellet. The applying liquid post pelleting liquid enzymes could be useful. Okay. But still you need to consider, right? What type of farming condition? That's for farmers as well. What type of feed? Which level, right? We're using these post pelleting liquid enzymes. So this one with dry enzyme, there are also issues with digestibility, as we mentioned, right? This is one study done at different temperature and time. So if you look at the condition, as I mentioned earlier, there are two critical phases where enzymes lose their activities. So one is the conditioning phase, another one is the cooking conditioning phase, another one is extrusion phase. In the cooking conditioning phase, the temperature is between 90 and 200 or 105. And in this case, after 5 minutes, depending on how many conditioners you have, right? If it is a shrimp feed, we normally have 3 conditioners, so 5 minutes residence time, and after 5 minutes, 44% enzymes left, and then as I mentioned, this enzyme activity was measured by azocasein assay, which is how much tyrosine is released, right? So after 5 minutes, 44% between 40-44% activity was remaining. In case of extrusion, temperature is 120-125 degrees Celsius, and residence time is very short, is the length of the barrel. So between 6 to 10 seconds, and even after 30 seconds, 0.5 minutes, 43% enzyme is remaining in the feed. So this is one. It's okay, we lose 5-10% in case of liquid enzymes. Here, we lose almost 60%, 40 to 60%, but 40% is left in the feed to work in the gut. We are almost not close to the end, but So there's another study, how much amino acid is liberated from feed. So as you see, that blue is T1, light green is a T, which is a T1 with enzyme. Uh, the orange is T3, zero fish meal with no enzyme, and T4 is zero fish meal with a protease. And as you can see, there is an increase in case of 5% fish meal with no tilapia enzyme added, with liver enzyme added, the same results. With 5% fish meal, you see some increase in the activity with the amino acid liberated from the feed. In case of intestinal enzymes added, you see the significant increase in case of both 5% fish meal and 0% fish meal with the protease. Okay. So this is the final questions in this section. Is the in case of cold water animals, right? Uh, enzymes are not active in the gut at 8, 9, 10, 12 degrees Celsius, right? So the question is, why we have seen some examples, cold water animals respond to feed enzymes. So the question is it the enzyme is working in the gut? We know that at that temperature, these feed enzymes are not working in the gut. Or something is happening during the manufacturing process where the feed quality, the protein profile is changing, that is influencing the performance of the animals, of these cold water animals. So this is very interesting question to look at. I think you will ask these questions. So pre-digestion during the manufacturing process, maybe 2 to 3% change in the protein profile, or the change in the carbohydrates, or change in the phytate P level, phytate phosphorus level, uh, can bring significant change in animal performance, right? So the pre-digestion could be an important factor for feed millers, for practitioners to understand, realize, and then use in their production process. Uh, so enzymes in the same group are not the same. It's a summary that there's a significant difference between each enzymes under the same group. Uh, Activity in feed means really very little. Each enzyme has their own optima and own preference, substrate preference. So their activity is based on their substrate preference. But the way we analyze activity is try to compare different enzymes. Activity is not an indicator. So coated versus non-coated, as I said, depends. We need to have coating material, and the active ingredient should release in the foregut or in the stomach, right? And then dry versus liquid also depends, right, on the culture animals, how long it needs to remain in the pellets need to remain in the water, right? We can choose which kind of enzymes we should be using. Now coming to the second part, just 3 or 4 slides in this case. Environment is critical. Managing waste is key. And then for aquaculture waste, we see the eutrophication, a lot of bad press, bad news, dead fish, right? So we need to manage the waste, our waste. We cannot keep doing the way we are releasing waste to the environment. So there are several studies about managing waste outputs in aquaculture and use of enzymes to reduce the waste. I will give you some examples from a lot of studies that we have done with protease, because it was protease. We looked at the apparent digestibility coefficient of nitrogen. As you can see, from control is the gray one, and then green is the diets with protease, same diets with protease. This lab is done, the experiment was done in lab. HFM is high fish meal, LFM is low fish meal, which is 10% fish meal, H is 18%, and 0FM is zero fish meal. And this is done in lab, but with commercial diets, with and without protease. In average, there was 3.3% increase in apparent digestibility coefficient of nitrogen. In the next slide, we looked at nitrogen efficiency ratio from in different species with and without protease. L is lab and C is in commercial condition. HD is high density, LD is low density. As you can see, tilapia 1.64 and zero point 0.4 without the protease enzyme increased to 1.70, and the nitrogen efficiency ratio increased to 1.7. In case of snakehead, in low density, increase in nitrogen efficiency ratio is more pronounced, 1.17 to 1.42, than the done in low density, right? So in average, just using the protease enzyme, there is an increase in nitrogen utilization efficiency by the animal by 14%. It is a highly significant increase. So I tried to summarize this increase. We're in the process of writing a paper on this increase in this nitrogen efficiency ratio as well as digestibility into how much nitrogenous waste we can reduce by using, for example, protease. So this is an example that from aquaculture, the amount of aquafeed we produced, and then from average nitrogen digestibility, today we produce about 500, more than 500,000 tons of nitrogenous waste from aquaculture. So with a 5-point increase, we can reduce the amount of nitrogen waste to 384,000 metric ton. So overall, if just with 5-point increase, right, we can have more than 100,000 tons of nitrogenous waste getting out to the environment. So this is a huge savings, environmental cost savings by using enzymes. By using phytase, obviously, we can reduce the phosphorus waste output to the environment. So we need to consider using enzymes in aquafeed, either in feed or on farm, and try to manage our waste more efficiently. So in summary, waste output is an obstacle for sustainable aquaculture development. We need to reduce or manage our waste, and enzymes can be a great solution, part of the solution to reduce the waste output, right? And this is a cost-effective way to manage waste. We have seen with the protease, the water is in pond, the water is in feed protease, water is much cleaner. So some underutilized protease also can hydrolyze the proteins in the water and make it better, make it easier for bacteria to break down. Right? And I consider enzymes essential, especially for RAS or closed system, because we have to reduce the burden of waste in the system so that so that the system can run more efficiently. So enzymes are essential for recirculation system or any closed system. Right? Finally, bioeconomy. I will show you just one single slide. So when raw material price is going up or going down, we need to switch from one level to another by changing the formulation. This is a protein example, a protease example. We can save up to $20, $30 depending on the formulation cost of the existing feed. The higher the cost of the existing formulation cost of the existing feed, the higher the savings. For example, say Pangasius feed, in case of catfish, like average savings was $5. For marine fish feed, it's about $22 average savings. So this is the final slide, and then final word is sustainability. We need to manage things the way we do for better sustainable production system, right? So we need to make sure that all stakeholders are benefited without destroying the environmental integrity as well as animal welfare. We need to make sure that animals are farmed in a proper way so that they are not under stress. We need to make sure that the environmental quality, we did not destroy or disturb the environment or reduce the disturbance to the environment, and as well as we need to make sure the socioeconomic benefits for all stakeholders. And with that, I would like to thank ANN as well, Jeffo and Temasek Polytechnic Aquaculture Innovation Center to be part of this event, and also to you all the participants today to listen to this this talk. With that, thank you so much. Thank you. Over to Dr. Fania Samara.
Thank you, Kabir. Very concise and comprehensive presentation of a very vast topic. So we will now open for questions. We have one question from the audience from Walter Mills. Sorry, my pronunciation. So the question is, can the use of microencapsulated enzymes result in less homogeneous distribution in the feeds compared to powder or liquid enzyme application?
Albert, no, you want me to?
No, I mean, you can answer that first, then I'll
Okay, this is a very interesting question, right? If we look at the microencapsulated enzymes, right, you cannot put like we cannot have 100% enzymes in the product, right? It could be between 50 to 80% enzymes depending on the microencapsulation materials. So I cannot say it is less homogeneous because even liquid enzymes or powder enzymes, so small amount, you put 200 ppm or 500 ppm. In case of powder enzymes, liquid enzymes is a similar level. It is very difficult to ensure homogeneous distribution of enzyme in feed. Um, but in aquaculture, homogeneity is much better, I would say, in aquafeed than poultry feed or swine feed. It's very difficult to have homogeneous distribution of enzymes in powder or liquid enzymes in poultry and swine feed than aquaculture. I think we obtain better homogeneity of enzymes in aqua feed because we have to have fine particles for sure. That's one in for aqua feed. Uh, so homogeneity is much better than the particle size range for other animal feed, which can range from like 60 micron to 1.5 right? So I would say it's depending on the pill size of the microencapsulation. So when we say our in aqua feed, we have say uh, for stream feed, we need like less than 250 micron. The pill size of the microencapsulated enzyme also needs to be the similar size, similar particle size. So we have to make sure that the feed it is targeting have the similar pill size to ensure the homogeneity. Thank you.
Yeah. If I can add my 2 cents worth, I really think enzymes is part of our future, but I really think that there are two ways we can use them. We can either use enzymes to pre-digest a feed ingredient to make it more digestible. Fermentation is a very good example of that. Soybean meal, yes, it's the number one used plant protein, but if you ferment it, you can really eliminate many of these anti-nutritional factors and improve its digestibility. And also enzymes in feed, I think, yes, it's also a very real possibility, but I think what we have is that from the point of view of the producers, we have to demonstrate, you know, under real world conditions through an extruder or through a pelleting machine that the enzyme is still active at the end of the processing, and that, or we use coating techniques so that we can deliver it to the right part of the digestive
System.
tract. But I just think that it's the onus is on the large producers to actually do that. But I really do think it's important and it's the future. We cannot formulate feeds anymore on the total nutrient basis. It has to be on a digestible nutrient basis, and enzymes is part of the solution for that. But I just think another area again is the use of enzymes outside the animal to actually use highly digestible ingredients, which is a bit like the salmon industry has done, in that the selection of ingredients are always highly digestible. Whereas in shrimp farming, for example, we tend to use what's available in the marketplace, and maybe sometimes digestibility is not high on the totem pole. It's more about price.
Right. So as I understand, Albert, like the pre-digestion, right? Outside the feed millers, so producing like pre-digested using pre-digested raw materials, that's fermented raw materials, one way to do it. Another way, I think currently some feed millers are practicing, right? Increase the residence time in the mixer with some moisture. So if you can
Yep.
increase the residence times like 2 to 5 minutes, the enzymes can be activated at that time, and they can hydrolyze the targeted, substrates. That's one way that some feed manufacturers are trying to do to solve this issue. That saves them some money as well, right? Because if you want to buy the fermented product, they're a bit costlier than the regular product. And if they want to ferment on site, they need to set different apparatus, right? But if they can increase the residence time by 5 minutes, they can achieve much better results. Just increasing residence time of the mesh with some moisture.
Also, linking to that, what you just said, there's another question from Kok Leong Wee. He's asking how significant is the pre-digestion during feed manufacture? If it's significant, would it be better to pre-digest the raw material prior to use in the feed manufacture?
I think, yeah, I think it's important they can do it, or they can buy it, a pre-registered raw material. But again, pre-registered raw material will be costly, a little bit more expensive than the regular raw material, and they need a different setup to pre-digest the raw material on site if they want to do it. So that's why I was suggesting that just increase the residence time to do, because if there's enough substrate available and the optimum environment is there for that particular enzyme acts very fast if there's enough substrates. They actually really switch from one substrate to another very quickly. So, and we don't want to hydrolyze 100%. Like, do you want to hydrolyze 100% of proteins, right? Do you want to have like 100% small peptides? No, we want to have 2 to 3 peptides, 2 to 3% small peptides, so that they can work in the gut. And if there's more than, there's a study in shrimp that they used fish hydrolyzers, 3, 6, 9, 15%. And up from 0 to 3%, there's a significant increase in digestive enzyme production, right? But after 3%, 6, 9, and 15% of fish hydrolysis inclusion, there's a linear decrease of digestive enzyme production. So animal can sense, right? Oh, we have high quality nutrients available. We don't need to produce digestive enzymes. So we need to tweak animals, brain a little, the internal mechanism to produce inherently more digestive enzymes. So having 2 to 3% small peptides, or having I'm talking about the protease, but phytase and caprase could be a different story, right? So in case of protease, we need to have 2 to 3% small peptides in the feed for animal to respond in a much better way than high level of. So we don't want to hydrolyze everything. Uh, you know. Thank you.
If I
Albert.
could if
Yeah,
I
yeah,
could reply to Kok
yeah.
Leong Wee, good question. No, I think more and more products are coming on the market now where the indigestible fraction has been removed. A good example is Hamlet protein, where the raffinose stacchylose has been removed from soybean meal.
Right.
It's a higher protein product, it's more expensive, but then we don't have this baggage that comes along with it. And in China now, we have more and more of these fermented products coming on the market. There are other companies locally, I mean, so that's going to come more and more. Um, in terms of proteins, we all know that fish and shrimp have a requirement for amino acids, not for proteins. Obviously, but we have good examples of products available in the marketplace which are basically hydrolysates, and also some products where enzymes are also used to, so these products are, it's all going to be about digestibility and nutrient availability. And in the salmon industry, that's been a standard. And that's why with the salmon industry, we have an economic FCR of 1.1 for a 4-kilo animal. But with shrimp, we have a 20-gram animal where we have an FCR, which is still too high. And that's mainly because we use ingredients which are not so digestible for the shrimp. And, the paradigm shift is partly going to be the use of either selecting ingredients which are highly digestible, which are expensive, or to use, enzymes within the feed. But I just think the ball is in the court of the enzymes producers to demonstrate to the feed companies that, it's still there at the end and it's going to work.
Okay, so continue on the costs of feeds. There's another question from Wouter Muse. He asks, in low-cost feeds, the use of enzymes is economically very challenging. Accepting 40 or 60% of activity loss during production, due to high temperature, even makes it impossible sometimes. So in these cases, coating is recommended. What are your thoughts?
Albert.
Personally, I mean, I would like, you know, enzymes are proteins, and we all know proteins can be denatured. And, if I'm paying for something, I want to make sure that it goes to where it's needed, and I haven't lost 50% during the processing. So, but again, microencapsulation or coating with lipid or there are many ways of doing it. And you have various companies out there that have tried, that have different production technologies. But I really do think that at the end of the day, in terms of using them in feeds, that I would prefer it if it was in a protected form anyway.
Kabir, any thoughts?
Well, there are two things, right? If we coat or if we do post pelleting, we lose the actions happening during manufacturing. We have some findings, especially with protease, as I work with the protease, that the peptide profile is changing during the manufacturing process. Some of the peptides, and we have also seen that the protein solubility has increased, say for example, from 10% to 11% the soluble protein level. These are the indicator of increased protein digestibility. Having said that, like we have also examples that I was mentioning, cold water animal, right? We have examples in salmonids. So we had better results in salmonids raised at even 8 degrees Celsius. We thought, before we analyzed all these peptides, that we thought something is happening during manufacturing, right? Why? Because enzymes, optimum temperature for our enzyme was 45 degrees Celsius, it is not working. So yes, when we investigated further, we found that yes, there is an increase in smaller and medium-sized peptides, as well as increase in soluble. So I agree that coating is a solution, but if we want to work in the gut, right, and to work in the gut, we need to have the coating such a way that it releases very early. So my suggestion for whoever is, we also have the facility, but we need to coat, we need to release the product very early. So we need to have very light coating. But again, light coating can be destroyed during the manufacturing process as well. So we need to find the right coating material, not to so that it doesn't just get destroyed during the manufacturing process, but it quickly releases the active ingredient in the foregut or stomach. So this is very critical, and I think a lot of research needs to be done. There was some work done in Thailand as well, but I think there's a lot of research to be done, needs to be done by companies like us, also by academia, to find right coating material to release the active ingredient in the right place in the gut. Albert.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. Of all the different enzymes available in the marketplace, probably the one that's probably used most by aquaculture has been the phytases, especially again in the salmon industry, where phosphorus and the environment and and having a responsible feed sector, is so I think there it's had more traction. But again, like Kabir explained, its effect is mainly in the stomach. These are animals that feed very, very fast. Um, so again, it's a good example of
Pre-digestion.
yeah.
We need prejudice.
Okay, so about the heat stability. So a question from Mohamed Arifur Rahman. Any myths about intrinsic heat stable enzymes? Is there any intrinsic heat stable enzymes? And if so, is there any myth around them?
No, Albert can talk about it. No. So how do we define heat stability, right? That's a big question. There's a huge variation in defining heat stability. So anything is stable up to 55, 65 degrees Celsius because if you look at the daily concentrate, right, it goes up to 55, 60. And then we go poultry feed 90 degrees Celsius. We go aqua, it's 100, 120, right? So for the industry, our industry, enzyme industry, anything above 55, 65, we try to describe it as heat stable enzyme. But heat stability can range from that 55, like 60, 55, 60 to 80, 85. So more heat stable enzymes can tolerate up to 80, 85, uh, but regular enzymes which consider themselves as heat stable can be 55, 65 degrees Celsius, can denature, start denaturing. They don't denature completely, never, but they start denaturing around 55, 65 degrees Celsius. But some enzymes can start denaturing much later, a much higher temperature, 80, 85. Thank you, Albert.
Yeah. No, I'm just being told that I have to leave the room
Oh,
where I'm in.
okay, we have
I
10
am I
minutes.
am I am currently in Boise in Idaho, traveling with my daughter who is an artist who's performing. So I'm being a good
I, I
dad.
will, I will
Um,
like watch.
but I hope you don't mind if I have to leave you now, or else I'm going to be locked out of my room.
I will write something if you like Bob Marley, right?
Please, yes. Okay.
Sorry.
But again, thank you, Kabir, for a very, for covering a very important topic. Watch this space. Enzymes are part of the future, but it's how we use them that's going to be critical. And I just think there's so much work that the industry that produces the enzymes have to demonstrate to us, the users, of how we can deliver it at the right time, at the right place. Okay,
Thank
so
you,
again,
Albert.
thank you very much. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Albert,
Thank
for
you,
your time.
Albert.
I think.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye,
Thank you for your
Albert.
time.
Okay, so Kabir, we
Yes.
can continue if you
Yes.
would
If there's more
like.
questions, right?
Uh, I don't have more questions for the audience, but maybe
Right.
I have one for you.
Right.
So if you have any idea how many or what's the, I don't think you can give me a percentage, but do you know how much of the feeds available actually use enzymes currently?
I think most of the feed producers are using, not most, I said over 50% of the feed producers, they're using phytase for sure, uh, followed by protease. I
Mm-hmm.
cannot say a percentage, but maybe, uh, and also carbohydrates, like specifically xylanase and then some other carbohydrates. But that would be less than, I would say 15% of the feed producers globally are using protease or other carbohydrates, but phytase is more widely used uh, by the industry
Mm-hmm.
because of the raw materials we are using, right?
Because
Because the raw materials,
plant-based or
that's plant-based proteins. So that's the main reason. But again, I would say uh, even when we choose phytase, right, we need to understand the raw material composition in the feed. Then we can decide what kind of phytase we need, whether we need phytase as well, right? If
mm-hmm.
we have high phytate raw material, for example, corn is high phytate, obviously, then we need to use phytase. We use rapeseed. In Europe, there is also high phytate rapeseed, canola, etc., right? Indian mustard. So depending on the raw materials we're using, we need to, and a lot of buzz about super dosing, right? That's actually
Mm.
doesn't help to hydrolyze the raw material, but it does help to to make this phosphorus available to the bacteria in the hindgut, not for the
Hmm.
animal, for the bacteria,
Without
so that
bacteria.
so less IP is released to the environment for super dosing. So I would suggest that normal dosing is fine if you want to have more environmental concern, and if you have very high phytate level in your diet, then probably you can go for super dosing. Okay.
Mm.
Okay.
And the feed manufacturers, do they state how much they include of enzymes in their feeds?
Well, depending on
How
the
would they shoot?
phytate, phytase is activity, right? So, as I said, 500 for super dosing, they go up to 1500 units. You know, uh, enzyme is each enzyme is different, right? So, I cannot
Mm.
necessarily say like for carbohydrates, depending on the level of activity in the product, right? Depends on the amount of enzymes they need to use in the feed. So, normally they follow recommendation of the supplier, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay, good. Thank you. I think we can wrap up. no more
Yes.
questions from the audience. Anything else you would like to add?
I would like to thank you and also thank Temasek Polytechnic to be part of this endeavor, this journey we started last year. And thank you for the audience, right? Thanks, Dr. Wee as well. I think I didn't mention name. We all know Dr. Wee. He's another
Yes.
legend. 1989 paper. I was mentioning from AIT, but thank you all. And just wait, stay tuned for the next month, right? We will have another talk on various,
Yes.
I think, very important talk stuff. So just stay tuned. Thank you, Fanny,
Yeah. Thank you.
for forwarding this. Thank you,
Thank you,
Ramshin, right?
Ronsin.
Ramshin
Yes.
in the back to, yeah.
Managing all. Yeah. So thank you, Kabir. Thank you for the audience as well. So we'll be coming back next month, probably end of the month. We will update. So keep tuned on the ANN channel on LinkedIn. And also, Ronsin will be sending the feedback form. So everybody, please, so we can respond to the feedback, so we can improve a little bit. If we have anything more to improve, well, we always have. So to improve our webinar, the topics, and then we can also share the recording of this session and also the presentation later on. Okay. Okay.
Thank you all.
So thank you
Thank you
very
all.
much. Stay
Okay, bye bye.
safe.
Bye bye.
See you next time.
Okay, bye bye. Ciao.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.